Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only for them to shatter that trust in the most unforgivable way? Sometimes the ones closest to us don't just disappoint. They abandon us when we need them most, leaving scars that never fully heal. My name is Margaret Coleman. I was 72 years old the night my life turned upside down. By then, I was already living with arthritis that stiffened my joints, and the loneliness that comes from being a widow for nearly a decade. My daughter Rebecca, the light of my life, had passed away from cancer 3 years earlier, leaving me with a grief so heavy that even time struggled to lighten it. I lived quietly in Maple Grove, Minnesota, in an old Victorian house filled with memories. Every corner whispered Rebecca's laughter, and every creak in the wooden floors reminded me that life had taken more from me than it ever gave back. That night, I expected nothing more than a storm outside and the familiar ache in my bones. But the world doesn't always give warnings before it changes everything. That October evening, with rain lashing against the windows and thunder rolling above the rooftops, I heard a sound that didn't belong. At first, I thought it was the storm playing tricks on me. But no storm had ever carried the fragile, heartbreaking cry of a baby. The sound pierced through the downpour, thin and trembling, yet so desperate it seemed to reach straight into my chest. My first instinct was denial. Surely I hadn't heard right. But as I strained my ears, the cry came again, louder this time, rising and falling with the rhythm of the storm. I pulled my robe tightly around me and hurried to the front door, my hip protesting with each step. The porch light had gone out weeks earlier, and I had been putting off asking my neighbor's son to replace it. Now I cursed my delay, fumbling with the lock in the dark, while that helpless cry tore at me. When the door finally opened, rain splattered across my face, cold and unrelenting. My eyes adjusted, and what I saw made my knees nearly buckle. A small, collapsing cardboard box sat on my porch. Inside it, soaked through, shivering and dressed in nothing but a thin pink onesie, was a baby girl. Her curls clung to her tiny head, dark and wet, but her eyes, those eyes cut through the night like a light I recognized instantly. Blue, piercing, familiar. They were Marcus's eyes. My son-in-law. The man who had vanished from my life after Rebecca's funeral. The man who hadn't so much as called in 3 years. Yet here was his daughter, my granddaughter, abandoned on my porch like a forgotten package. Tucked into the corner of the box was a crumpled scrap of paper, smudged with rain. With trembling hands, I unfolded it. "Margaret, I can't do this anymore. Her name is Lily. Take care of her. Marcus." That was all. No explanation. No promise. Just surrender. I scooped that fragile child into my arms, faster than my joints should have allowed. Her skin was clammy, her lips trembling as she tried to cry again, but the sound came out weaker this time, almost like she was too tired to keep fighting. I pressed her against my chest and whispered, "You're safe now, sweetheart. You're safe." Inside the house, I turned the thermostat high and tore through closets and storage boxes until I found what I hadn't touched in decades, Rebecca's baby things. Tiny clothes, a few old bottles, even her crib, though I couldn't assemble it alone that night. Everything smelled faintly of mothballs and thyme, but it would have to do. Lily, yes, that's what the note said, was ravenous. I had nothing in the house for a baby, not even formula. At nearly 1 in the morning, I drove through the pounding rain to the only pharmacy open. The young clerk looked at me, hair plastered to my head, robe soaked through, as I clutched a hastily written list of baby supplies. He didn't ask questions, only gave me what I needed with a quiet kindness that nearly broke me. Back home, I laid Lily on makeshift bedding made from cushions and towels beside me on the floor. I couldn't risk her being out of reach. All night I watched her chest rise and fall, terrified that if I closed my eyes she might disappear, just like her mother had. By dawn, I knew 2 things. My life would never be the same, and no matter what it took, this child was mine to protect. Legal or not. Ready or not. She was family, and family stays. To you watching this, before I continue, allow me to pause and send you a word of blessing. I know many of you carry heavy burdens. Some of you are in your 60s, 70s, even 80s, and the world has not always been gentle. The body aches, the nights get longer, and sometimes the loneliness weighs more than the years themselves. But I pray for you. Yes, for you listening right now. May your heart find peace where there has been betrayal. May your body be strengthened where there is pain. And may you never feel abandoned, even when life tests you. If you are a grandmother, I pray your children and grandchildren bring you comfort, not grief. If you are a grandfather, I pray your wisdom continues to shine on your family. And if you are simply someone who has felt the sting of being left behind, may you know today that you are seen, you are valued, and you are loved. Because this story I am sharing with you is not just mine, it belongs to every soul who has ever fought to protect what is dear to them. So before we continue, if you are touched by these words, subscribe to this channel. Tell us where in the world you are watching from, because this family we are building reaches far beyond one porch on a stormy night in Minnesota. Those first months with Lily nearly broke me. I was 72, and suddenly I found myself living the life of a new mother again. Only this time, I didn't have the youthful strength I once had when Rebecca was a baby, nor the steady paycheck Harold used to bring home. My days blurred together with bottles to wash, diapers to change, and cries that came at hours when my aching body begged for rest. Arthritis made it difficult to bend over the crib or rock her for long, yet somehow I did it. Every whimper stirred something inside me that told me, you cannot fail her. Money became a shadow that followed me everywhere. My monthly Social Security check of a little over $1,200 was barely enough to cover my own needs. Now it had to stretch for formula, diapers, and doctor visits. I sold jewelry that Harold had once given me, and I started clipping coupons like it was my second job. Sometimes, I ate toast for dinner so that Lily could have a jar of baby food. There were nights I sat at the kitchen table, the baby monitor hissing softly beside me, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Perhaps calling social services would have been wiser. But every time I looked into Lily's eyes, those doubts vanished. She didn't choose to be abandoned. She didn't ask to lose her mother. She deserved love, not another system that might shuffle her from home to home. So, even with swollen joints, sleepless nights, and bills piling high, I chose her. Again and again. As weeks turned into months, I realized love alone would not be enough. Without legal standing, I had no authority to take Lily to the doctor, enroll her in childcare, or make decisions about her future. That's when I filed for temporary guardianship. I remember the first time the social worker, Ms. Patricia Hendricks, stepped into my living room. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, professional, and spoke as though she had already made up her mind before sitting down. She glanced around at my modest furniture, my worn carpet, and then at my wrinkled hands as I cradled Lily. "Mrs. Coleman," she said, folding her hands over a clipboard, "raising an infant at your age presents serious challenges. Have you considered that Lily might be better off in a younger household?" Her words cut deeper than any storm outside my door ever could. I steadied my voice. "This child is my granddaughter. She belongs with family. I won't let her disappear into a system where she's just another file number." But Miss Hendricks wasn't easily swayed. She pointed out that I had no birth certificate for Lily, no medical records, no proof beyond my word that she was related to me at all. That night, after putting Lily down to sleep, I pulled out Rebecca's old photo albums. I studied picture after picture until I found what I needed. Marcus, holding a newborn, smiling weakly at Rebecca. The date stamped at the bottom showed it was just weeks before my daughter died. That baby was Lily. At the next meeting, I handed those photographs over. Miss Hendricks examined them closely. Though her face gave little away, I noticed the slight shift in her tone. Eventually, after months of questions and home inspections, the court granted me temporary guardianship. It wasn't yet permanent, but it gave me the authority I needed to raise Lily without fear of her being taken overnight. For the first time since that stormy October night, I felt the faintest sense of stability. No one survives raising a child alone, especially not at 72. As much as I wanted to believe I could carry the weight by myself, my body reminded me every day that I wasn't as strong as I once had been. Help came from places I didn't expect. One afternoon, as I struggled with grocery bags and a restless toddler, my neighbor, Dorothy Nakamura, appeared at my porch with a casserole dish in her hands. Dorothy had recently retired from her work as a pediatric nurse. She was 4 years younger than me, sprightly, and had the no-nonsense spirit of someone who'd spent a lifetime in hospitals. "Margaret," she said, setting the dish down firmly, "you can't do this alone. Let me help." From then on, Dorothy became my lifeline. She showed me the latest ways to soothe colic, reminded me about vaccination schedules, and even sat with Lily when my arthritis left me too stiff to move from bed. More than that, she became someone to talk to on the long days when loneliness pressed heavy. But Dorothy wasn't the only one. At the Maple Grove Community Center, I found a support group for grandparents raising grandchildren. I hesitated before walking through that door the first time, but inside I met 12 others carrying the same burden. Some had lost their children to illness, others to addiction or prison. Their stories were heartbreaking, yet their resilience gave me strength. That group connected me to resources I didn't know existed. Through them, Lily was enrolled in a subsidized preschool program designed for families like ours. Without it, I never could have afforded the tuition. For the first time, I saw Lily surrounded by other children her age, learning, laughing, and thriving in ways that lifted my heart. We learned to stretch every dollar together, sharing tips about thrift stores, food pantries, and community aid. And in that circle of grandparents, I no longer felt alone in my fight. It was in those years that Lily began to blossom. She called me Gamma as her first word, and when she took her first steps, she came straight into my arms. Those moments, fleeting as they were, reminded me why every sacrifice was worth it. The years passed faster than I ever expected. By the time Lily turned 3, the little girl who had once been left on my porch in a rain-soaked box was running around the living room, asking endless questions and filling my quiet house with laughter. I documented everything: her first words, her drawings, even the way she clapped when she learned to count to 10. I kept journals and filled photo albums, not only to preserve the memories, but because a small voice inside me whispered that someday, proof of our life together might matter. Still, raising her at my age came with moments of fear. When Lily was 7, I woke one morning with chest pains so sharp it felt like fire in my ribs. The doctors called it a mild heart attack. For 3 days, I lay in a hospital bed, terrified that if I didn't make it, Lily would be left alone once more. That thought frightened me more than death itself. It was then I realized love wasn't enough. If I truly wanted to secure her future, I needed more than temporary guardianship. I needed full legal custody. Through a senior assistance program, I met attorney Jennifer Walsh, who took my case pro bono. Together, we began the long process of converting my guardianship into permanent custody. There were background checks, home visits, and hearings where I had to prove again and again that I could provide Lily with stability. Each time I sat in that courtroom, I felt the weight of my years pressing against me. Yet when I looked at Lily's bright eyes, filled with trust, I knew I had to keep going. At last, the order was signed. I was no longer just the grandmother who had stepped in out of necessity. I was Lily's legal parent, with every right and responsibility that came with it. That paper didn't change how I loved her, but it gave me peace. For the first time since that stormy night, I felt I could breathe. Lily was safe with me, not just in my heart, but in the eyes of the law. By the time Lily entered kindergarten, she had grown into a curious, bright child who absorbed the world like a sponge. Her teachers praised her reading skills, her eagerness to learn, and the kindness she showed to other children. Each time a teacher told me, "She's exceptional," I felt Rebecca's presence smiling down on us. But while Lily thrived, I often carried my struggles in silence. Grocery bills stretched thin. Arthritis made every step slower, and there were days when exhaustion clung to me like a heavy coat. Yet whenever Lily wrapped her small arms around my neck and whispered, "I love you, Gamma," I found the strength to keep going. I knew then that this journey wasn't just about survival. It was about showing her that love could triumph over loss, and that family was more than bloodlines or court papers. Honey, let me ask you something. Do you know a grandmother in your community who is raising her grandchild? Have you seen the quiet sacrifices, the unspoken burdens, and the way her love holds that child's world together? If so, honor her today. Share her story. Remind her that she is not alone. And if you are one of those grandmothers listening right now, this prayer is for you. May your strength never fail. May your heart be comforted in weary moments, and may you always see the fruits of your sacrifice in the lives of the children you nurture. This journey is not easy. but it is sacred. Life with Lily had settled into something steady by the time she turned 10. She was thriving in school, loved science experiments, and filled the house with curiosity that reminded me so much of her mother. I had grown used to the rhythm of our life together. I truly believed the past had been buried for good. Then, one Tuesday morning in March, the mail shattered that illusion. I was sorting through bills and advertisements when I noticed a heavy envelope stamped with the name of a Chicago law firm, Brennan, Murphy and Associates. My hands trembled before I even opened it. Somehow I knew this was not ordinary mail. The letter inside made my chest tighten until I thought I might faint. It read, "Dear Mrs. Coleman, we represent Mr. Marcus Delaney in the matter of his parental rights regarding the minor child, Lily Rose Delaney. Our client intends to petition the court for full custody of his daughter and to seek compensation for expenses related to her unauthorized care." My knees gave way, and the letter slipped to the floor. Unauthorized care? 10 years of feeding, sheltering, and loving this child was now being twisted into something criminal. They were demanding reimbursement, down to the last penny, for a total of $127,000. The man who had left his baby on my porch during a storm was now a polished professional in Chicago, remarried to a wealthy woman, and armed with lawyers who wanted to strip me of the child I had raised as my own. In that moment, fear became my constant companion. For the first time in years, I wondered if love alone would be enough to keep Lily safe. 3 days after the letter, the doorbell rang on a quiet Saturday morning. Through the peephole, I saw a man who was familiar yet foreign. Gone was the nervous, lean young man I remembered from Rebecca's wedding. Marcus, standing on my porch, wore an expensive suit, his hair neatly styled, his smile polished like he had practiced it in a mirror. I kept the chain on the door when I opened it. My voice was firm. "What do you want, Marcus?" He tilted his head slightly, as if we were old friends catching up. "I want to see my daughter." "I think that's reasonable, don't you?" The audacity of it made my blood boil. "Reasonable? You left her in a cardboard box during a storm. She was 6 months old, cold, hungry, abandoned. And now you want to stroll back in like nothing happened." He sighed, rehearsed and calm. "I was grieving Rebecca. I wasn't ready. But I've built a stable life now. A house, a career, a wife. I can give Lily what she deserves." I gripped the door tighter. "She doesn't remember you. She doesn't need you. For 10 years I've been her family. You can't erase that with money and lawyers." His smile faltered just long enough for me to see the steel underneath. "That's about to change." When I slammed the door shut, my hands were trembling. The chain rattled as if mocking me. He was no longer the broken man who left his daughter to fate. He was powerful, backed by resources I could never match. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. For the first time, I truly feared I might lose her. My Lily. My reason for living. I dreaded the moment I would have to tell Lily. She was only 10, old enough to ask difficult questions but still young enough to carry innocent faith in the world. One evening, I sat her down at the kitchen table. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound between us as I tried to steady my voice. "Sweetheart," I began, "do you remember when you asked me about your daddy?" Her bright blue eyes widened. "You said he might come back one day." I swallowed hard. "He has. He wants to see you." The words hung heavy in the air. For a moment she looked puzzled, then her face crumpled. "But I don't know him. Gamma, I don't want to live with him." I reached for her hand, but tears had already started to spill down her cheeks. "He's a stranger. You're my family. You're the one who stayed. Please don't let him take me away." Her sobs pierced through me. I pulled her into my arms and held her as tightly as I could, wishing my embrace alone could shield her from every threat. Later that night, when she had cried herself to sleep, I sat beside her bed and prayed like I had never prayed before. "Lord, don't let him take her. She's my Rebecca's child. She's all I have left. Please, give me strength." Her words echoed in my ears long after the house grew quiet. "I don't want to live with him. I want to stay with you." It was the kind of plea no child should ever have to make. And it fueled something inside me, a resolve deeper than fear. If Marcus wanted a battle, he would find me ready. Fear can paralyze you, but it can also push you into action. I knew Marcus had money, connections, and lawyers. All I had was truth, and I needed proof of it. That's when I hired Tom Riley, a retired detective who now worked as a private investigator. Tom was in his 60s, silver-haired, with a straightforward way of speaking that put me at ease. He listened quietly as I told him everything. How Marcus left Lily, how he'd resurfaced a decade later, and the lawsuit demanding both custody and repayment. "I'll find out what he's been up to," Tom said. "People can change, but abandonment leaves a trail. Let's see what kind of man he really is." 2 weeks later, we met at a small cafe in downtown Minneapolis. Tom slid a thick folder across the table. "You need to see this." The first pages detailed Marcus's employment history. He had been fired from not one, but 2 pharmaceutical companies for falsifying sales numbers and padding his expense accounts. His current job in Chicago was already hanging by a thread. Then came photographs. There was Marcus, standing at charity events, speaking about Father's rights. He had spun a story that his daughter had been taken from him by vindictive grandparents. He'd raised thousands of dollars in donations under that lie. And the final blow, text messages between Marcus and his wife Catherine. Catherine had written, "The doctor says we can't have children. What about that daughter you told me about?" Marcus replied, "She's been with my mother-in-law for years. Could be complicated. But the old lady has spent a fortune on her. Maybe I can demand repayment. Make it costly for her to fight." I gripped the papers, my hands shaking with both rage and clarity. This wasn't about love or regret. It wasn't even about Lily. It was about convenience, money, and pride. Tom leaned forward. He doesn't want her because she's his child. He wants her because she fills a gap in his life. That's not fatherhood. It's opportunism. At that moment, my fear shifted. Yes, Marcus had power. But I had the truth, and I would wield it with everything I had left. The more Tom uncovered, the more my fear turned into determination. I wasn't just fighting for custody. I was fighting to protect Lily from a man who saw her as nothing more than a solution to his own failures. But I also knew the courts would not be kind. Marcus was a biological father, wealthy, and backed by lawyers who could twist abandonment into a temporary lapse. They would argue that I was too old, too frail, and too poor to keep raising a child heading into adolescence. Every day until the hearing felt like walking on thin ice, knowing one wrong step could send us crashing into loss. At night, I would sit by Lily's bed and watch her sleep, the soft rise and fall of her chest a reminder of everything I had fought for these past 10 years. I remembered the stormy night I first found her, trembling in that box, and I swore to myself, I would not let history repeat itself. Still, questions circled in my mind like restless birds. Would the court see the truth? Or would they hand her over to a man who abandoned her once, and would likely do it again? Honey, let me turn to you. Do you think the court should favor blood, even when that blood has proven untrustworthy? Or should they favor the one who stayed, the one who sacrificed, protected, and loved through every storm? Tell me what you believe, because this question doesn't just belong to me. It belongs to every family that has faced this same cruel crossroad. I knew I couldn't walk into that courtroom with fear alone. Marcus had a team of attorneys in polished suits, each one trained to turn the truth into something unrecognizable. My public defender was kind but overwhelmed, stretched thin with too many cases. If I wanted a fighting chance, I needed someone who could face Marcus head-on. That's when I met Jennifer Morrison. Jennifer had a reputation across Minneapolis as the Iron Lady of family law. At 60 years old, she carried herself with the sharp poise of someone who had seen it all. She didn't waste words, and her eyes had the kind of steel that told me she had no patience for weakness, especially not from the likes of Marcus Delaney. When I first stepped into her downtown office, I felt small. My trembling hands clutched the last of my savings, money scraped together by selling Harold's vintage car, emptying my modest nest egg, and even taking out a loan against the house. "This is everything I have," I told her, sliding the cashier's check across her desk. Jennifer leaned back, studying me for a long moment. "Mrs. Coleman, I've handled dozens of custody cases. You should know, courts often lean toward reunification with a biological parent. This won't be easy." I steadied my voice. "I don't care if it's easy. I care if Lily stays with me. If I lose her, I lose the last piece of my daughter. Something shifted in Jennifer's expression then. She no longer saw me as just another desperate grandmother. She saw a fighter. "All right," she said, her tone firm. "Then we don't just defend. We attack. We'll counter-sue for abandonment, fraud, and emotional harm. If Marcus wants a war, he's about to get one." Her words lit a fire in me I didn't know I still had. For the first time since that dreadful letter arrived, I believed we might actually win. The courthouse was colder than I imagined, its marble floors echoing with footsteps that seemed too loud for the gravity of what was about to unfold. On one side of the aisle sat Marcus with his two attorneys, sleek suits and expensive leather briefcases lined neatly in front of them. On the other side sat Jennifer Morrison and me, our table stacked high with files, photographs, and the thick folder Tom Riley had assembled. When the judge called us to order, Marcus leaned back with a smirk. He looked like a man convinced the outcome was already written in his favor. Jennifer rose first. Her voice, clear and sharp, carried across the room. "Your Honor, the petitioner abandoned his daughter as an infant, leaving her in dangerous conditions without support, without documentation, and without any intent to return. For 10 years, he contributed nothing. Not a phone call, not a penny, not even a whisper of concern. Now, suddenly, he resurfaces. Not out of love, but out of convenience. This is not a case of a father reclaiming his rights. This is a case of a man attempting to exploit the child he once left behind." Gasps rippled across the courtroom gallery. Marcus shifted in his seat, his smirk faltering. Then Jennifer did what she did best. She dismantled him piece by piece. She called attention to his firings for falsified sales reports. She presented photographs of him at charity events, spinning lies to sympathetic donors about a grandmother who stole his child. She revealed his fraudulent fundraising, money pocketed under the guise of reclaiming a daughter he hadn't even bothered to check on for a decade. Every detail painted Marcus not as a grieving father, but as a manipulator, a man who had rewritten his own story to make himself a victim, when the real victim sat beside me, still just a child. I looked at Lily, seated quietly a few feet away, her small hands clasped together in her lap. Her trust in me gave me strength, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She knew, even at her age, that this was no ordinary fight. Jennifer wasn't finished. After laying out Marcus's employment failures and fraudulent fundraising, she reached for the folder Tom Riley had prepared. Inside were the text messages, every word Marcus and his wife Catherine had exchanged about Lily. "Your Honor," Jennifer said, holding up the pages, "the petitioner would have this court believe his actions stem from love and paternal duty. But the truth, written in his own words, tells another story." She began to read aloud. "Catherine, the doctor says we can't have children. What about that daughter you told me about? Marcus, she's been with my mother-in-law for years. Could be complicated. Catherine, how complicated? She's your daughter. We could give her so much more than an old woman on Social Security. Marcus, the old lady's been spending money raising her. Maybe I can demand reimbursement. Make it too costly for her to fight." Gasps swept through the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Jennifer let the silence linger before speaking again. "This is not the language of a loving father. This is the language of a man who views his child as a commodity, a bargaining chip to satisfy his wife's disappointment and to exploit the sacrifices of the grandmother who raised her." Marcus's attorneys scrambled, objecting to the introduction of personal communications, but the judge overruled. The evidence was damning. Marcus sat rigid, his face pale, his polished exterior cracking with every word read aloud. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not the fear of losing a daughter he cherished, but the fear of being exposed. Jennifer closed the folder and looked directly at the judge. "This case is not about parental rights. It is about a man who abandoned his child, who lied for financial gain, and who now seeks to punish the very person who saved that child's life." The courtroom was silent. Every soul in that room understood what kind of man Marcus had become. And for the first time since this battle began, I felt hope tip the scales in our favor. Jennifer knew the evidence was strong, but she also knew no document could compare to the voice of the child at the center of it all. With firm resolve, she requested that Lily be allowed to testify. The judge hesitated. She's 10 years old. Are you certain? Jennifer nodded. Her voice is crucial, Your Honor. The court needs to hear what she wants, not what her father demands, not what the lawyers argue. Her truth. When Lily walked to the witness stand, her little blue dress seemed to swallow her small frame. She clutched the wooden railing as if it might steady her against the weight of the room. My heart ached, watching her sit there under the gaze of strangers, her tiny legs dangling, unable to touch the floor. Jennifer's tone softened. Lily, can you tell us who takes care of you at home? She looked toward me and smiled faintly. My Gamma. She makes me breakfast, helps me with homework, and stays with me when I'm sick. Do you remember your father? Lily's eyes shifted to Marcus for the first time since the hearing began. Her voice didn't tremble. No. He's a stranger to me. Jennifer gave her space before asking the hardest question. How would you feel if the court asked you to live with him? Lily's answer cut straight through the room. I don't need more opportunities. I need my Gamma. She's my family. She's the only one who's been there my whole life. Marcus's lead attorney rose for cross-examination, suggesting Lily might enjoy more toys, travel, and private schooling if she lived with her father. Lily tilted her head, her reply clear and simple. Toys don't tuck you in at night. Gamma does. The courtroom fell into complete silence. Even the judge's stern expression softened as Lily's words echoed in the stillness. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness but from pride. My granddaughter had spoken truth with more courage than most adults ever could. At that moment, I knew. We had already won in the only way that mattered. Just when I thought Jennifer had played every card, she rose and called a witness whose name made my breath catch. Your Honor, the defense calls Dr. Patricia Hendricks. I hadn't seen Patricia in years. She had been the social worker assigned to my case when Lily first came into my life, the one who once doubted my ability to raise a child at my age. I watched in silence as she took the stand, her posture upright, her presence calm but commanding. Jennifer approached with quiet confidence. Dr. Hendricks, during your career with Hennepin County, did you oversee the guardianship process for Margaret Coleman and her granddaughter Lily? Yes, I did, Patricia replied firmly. What was your initial assessment? Patricia folded her hands. Initially, I questioned whether Mrs. Coleman could manage the demands of raising an infant. Her age, her limited income, her health, all legitimate concerns. I worried Lily might be better served in a younger household. Marcus's attorneys leaned forward, nodding as if her words would serve them. But then her tone shifted. But over the months I supervised this case, I saw something extraordinary. I saw a grandmother who sacrificed everything to give a child stability. I saw a home filled not with wealth, but with safety, structure, and unconditional love. In 30 years of social work, I rarely encountered such devotion. Jennifer's next question came gently. And in your professional opinion, what would it mean for Lily to be removed from that home now? Patricia's eyes shifted to Marcus before returning to the judge. Her words were steady, but her voice carried weight. It would be psychological harm. This child has already been abandoned by this man once. To uproot her from the only stable environment she has ever known would not just be disruptive, it would be cruel. The courtroom was silent. Even Marcus's attorneys seemed rattled. For the first time, it felt as though the system that once doubted me now stood firmly in my corner. When Patricia stepped down, I whispered a silent thank you. The same woman who once questioned my fitness to raise Lily had just delivered the testimony that might save us both. The judge left the bench to deliberate, but it didn't take long. Less than an hour later, he returned, his expression unreadable. The room stilled, every eye fixed on him. He began slowly, his voice firm. The petitioner, Mr. Marcus Delaney, has argued that he is now financially stable, remarried, and capable of providing a better life for his daughter. However, the evidence presented tells another story, one of abandonment, deception, and self-interest. He paused, glancing at Marcus before continuing. This court finds that Mr. Delaney voluntarily forfeited his rights when he left his infant child in unsafe conditions and failed to provide care for over a decade. Furthermore, his recent actions demonstrate not paternal love, but opportunism motivated by financial and personal convenience. The judge's gaze softened slightly as he turned toward me. Mrs. Coleman, Your permanent custody of Lily Rose is hereby confirmed and protected. In addition, this court is referring Mr. Delaney's fraudulent fundraising activities to the State Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. His gavel came down with a sharp crack. The sound was final, undeniable, a victory sealed. Marcus's face was drained of color. His attorneys whispered urgently, gathering their papers, but it was over. He had lost. Soon after, he would lose far more: his freedom, his reputation, even his marriage. But at that moment, none of that mattered to me. What mattered was the small hand that slipped into mine as we left the courtroom. Lily looked up at me with tearful eyes, a smile breaking through her fear. "Gamma," she whispered, "we get to stay together." I squeezed her hand gently. "Always, sweetheart. Always." That evening, as we sat in our backyard watching the sun sink over Maple Grove, I realized this fight had never been about winning a courtroom battle. It had been about proving, once and for all, that love isn't measured in bank accounts or polished suits. It's measured in presence, sacrifice, and the courage to stay when others walk away. And in the end, love had won. When I look back now, I hardly recognize the woman I once was. 10 years ago, I thought my life was winding down. My body ached, my savings were thin, and the grief of losing my only daughter weighed so heavily I often wondered how many more mornings I could endure. I was already 72, preparing quietly for my twilight years. Then came that stormy night, the night a cry cut through the wind and placed Lily in my arms. I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. But somehow I found strength. Raising her wasn't easy. My body fought me every step of the way. My bank account screamed in protest. And many nights, I cried quietly so Lily wouldn't hear. But through every trial, I discovered something I never knew was inside me: resilience that only love can awaken. When Marcus returned, polished and wealthy, I thought my age and frailty would betray me. That maybe I was too small, too insignificant to stand against him. But I learned that true strength doesn't come from youth or money. It comes from love. The kind of love that doesn't walk away, doesn't calculate profit, doesn't quit when storms come. That love carried me through courtrooms, through sleepless nights, through moments where I felt the walls closing in. And in the end, it carried me to victory, not for myself but for Lily. Because family is not measured by DNA. It is measured by presence. It is measured by who shows up when life falls apart. It is measured by sacrifice, the quiet kind that asks for nothing in return. Marcus had the biology, but I had the bond. And that bond was stronger than any argument, stronger than any bank account, stronger than the lies he spun. To every grandmother listening, to every parent or guardian who has stood in the gap for a child, never underestimate the power of showing up. Children remember who stayed. They carry it with them, tucked deep in their hearts, long after the toys are forgotten, long after the years have passed. I often wonder what Lily will remember about these years. Not the hardships, I pray. Not the fear of losing me in those hospital moments. But the warmth of bedtime stories, the laughter of baking cookies together, the security of knowing she always had someone in her corner. That's the legacy I want to leave behind. And to you, honey, watching this, hold close to the truth that family is built in actions, not in titles. Blood may connect us, but love binds us. If you are raising a grandchild, a niece, a nephew, or even a neighbor's child, what you are doing is holy work. It is not easy, and it may feel thankless at times, but the seed you are planting will grow into something lasting. Now, before I close, let me offer a blessing from my heart to yours. For every parent, may you have patience for your children and see joy in their small victories. For every grandmother and grandfather, may your wisdom be honored, your sacrifices recognized, and your days filled with peace. For those listening who have carried betrayal or abandonment, may healing find its way into your heart. And for those who are lonely, may companionship and comfort visit your home in ways you never expected. I pray your children and grandchildren rise to call you blessed. I pray your health is sustained, your nights are peaceful, and your mornings filled with light. And above all, I pray you never forget your worth. You matter deeply, and the love you give is never wasted. Lily once told me, "Gamma, I don't need more opportunities. I need you." That simple truth carries a lesson for us all. The greatest gift we can give is ourselves. Not riches, not grand promises, just the steady, faithful presence of love. So, as we close this chapter, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts with us. Tell us about the grandparents in your life who became heroes without capes, who stood firm when life grew difficult. Comment below and let us honor them together. And if this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Share this video so others can be encouraged, and let us know where you're watching from. Our family stretches across the world, and every story we share brings us closer. Because in the end, stories like this remind us of one unshakable truth. Love is stronger than loss, stronger than fear, and stronger than those who walk away. Love stays. And that is what makes a family